The massive holographic message appeared over every major city on Earth, its blue light cutting through clouds and darkness alike. It was humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, and it came not with the bang of invasion, but with the polite cough of bureaucracy. Your species has achieved faster than light travel. The message stated in perfect English. The Galactic Council extends an invitation for Earth to send one representative to attend the next council meeting. In Washington, D.C., the United Earth government scrambled to respond. Politicians argued, military leaders debated, and diplomats fought over who should represent humanity. But in a small office overlooking the Potomac River, Robert Thompson watched the chaos with tired eyes. As head of the global diplomatic court, he knew exactly who they needed. "Get me James Walker," he told his assistant. Walker wasn't the obvious choice. At 35, he was young for a diplomat. He didn't come from a wealthy family or have powerful connections. What he did have was an uncanny ability to read people, and aliens, as it turned out, during humanity's few encounters with spacefaring traders. When Walker arrived at Thompson's office, he found not just his boss, but 3 generals, 2 politicians, and a scientist hunched over tablets and papers. "You've seen the message?" Thompson asked. Walker nodded. "Hard to miss a mile-high alien hologram." "We need someone who won't bow to pressure," one general said. "The aliens already think we're primitive. Most of their species achieved FTL centuries or millennia ago." Walker picked up a tablet, studying the preliminary data they'd gathered about the council. 15 species, he murmured, all more advanced than us. The youngest achieved FTL 300 years ago. "Which makes us infants in their eyes," the scientist added. "Our FTL drive is barely 5 years old." Walker continued reading, his eyes narrowing. "These trade agreements with new members, they're all one-sided. Heavy resource commitments, technology sharing that goes mostly one way. You see it too." Thompson leaned forward. "That's why we want you. You spot patterns others miss." The politicians weren't happy. They wanted someone more prestigious, more suitable for first contact. But Thompson stood firm, and 3 days later, Walker found himself aboard humanity's newest ship, the Terra Dawn, heading for the Council's meeting point. The ship's AI, Emma, kept him company during the week-long journey. "Incoming transmission," she announced one morning. From the Council's welcoming committee, the alien that appeared on screen had gray skin and 4 eyes. "Human vessel," it said, "please be advised that your primitive shielding technology may not be sufficient for approaching the Council station. We can provide an escort." "Thank you," Walker interrupted politely, "but the Terra Dawn's shields are fully capable of handling neutron star radiation. We've studied your public specifications carefully." The alien blinked all 4 eyes in what Walker guessed was surprise. "Very well. Though perhaps you'd prefer to dock at the outer rings. The inner docks are rather technical." "The inner docks will be fine," Walker replied, keeping his voice pleasant while noting the attempted manipulation. They were trying to put humanity in its place before he even arrived. As the Terra Dawn approached the massive station, a structure that made Earth's largest space station look like a toy, Walker received 17 more helpful suggestions about where to dock, what to wear, and how to behave. Each one was clearly designed to make humanity seem inferior. "They're trying very hard to establish dominance," Emma observed. Walker smiled. "Yes, they are, which means they're worried about something." He straightened his simple black suit, chosen specifically because every suggestion had urged elaborate diplomatic robes. "Log everything, Emma. Every transmission, every suggestion, every attempt to make us feel small. You think they're hiding something. Advanced species don't work this hard to put down newcomers unless they're protecting something." Walker watched as the station grew larger in their view. "The question is, what are they afraid we might discover?" The Terra Dawn docked smoothly, ignoring the protests about using the reserved inner docks. As Walker prepared to disembark, he took one last look at Earth's data about the Council. Something wasn't right about this organization, and he was going to find out what it was. What he didn't know then was that his arrival would change the galaxy forever. Walker stepped onto the Council Station's polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the vast docking bay. The air smelled of metal and something sweet, like artificial flowers trying too hard to be pleasant. Above him, massive screens displayed ships coming and going, each tagged with their species of origin. The welcoming committee consisted of 3 aliens, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, a stocky creature covered in what looked like metallic scales, and a floating orb of swirling gas contained in a transparent shell. None of them offered the customary Earth greeting of a handshake. "Human Walker," the willowy one said, "I am first speaker Ray of the Luminary. You will follow us to your assigned quarters." Walker noticed the pause. He'd been studying alien body language for weeks, and that hesitation wasn't accidental. "Thank you," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "Though I believe the standard protocol is to meet the council first." The gaseous being rippled in what might have been amusement. "Surely you don't expect the full council to greet every new species immediately. There are procedures, orientations." "Actually," Walker interrupted, pulling up the council charter on his tablet. "Section 7. Paragraph 3 states that new species representatives must be presented to the council within 1 standard rotation of arrival." The 3 aliens exchanged looks. The scaled one's tail twitched in what Walker's study suggested was annoyance. "Very well," it growled. "Follow us." As they walked through the station's corridors, Walker observed everything. Other diplomats passed them, some walking, others floating or slithering. Many stopped to stare at him, their expressions ranging from curiosity to undisguised contempt. "Look," one whispered loudly enough to be heard, "it still has external ears." "And only 2 eyes," another added. "How do they even navigate?" Walker kept walking, but he noticed something interesting. The mockery came mainly from the middle-ranked species. The oldest races, easily identified by their ornate decorations, simply watched in silence. The youngest species showed something closer to sympathy. They reached the council chamber, a massive round room with tiered seating. 15 primary seats formed an inner circle, with hundreds of secondary positions rising behind them. Walker was led to a small platform in the center. The human representative, first Speaker Ray announced, voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. The council members looked down at him. Most were physically present, though a few appeared as high-resolution holograms. Walker spotted the power structure immediately. The 3 oldest species sat slightly higher than the rest, their sections marked with ancient symbols. "Welcome," said a being made entirely of crystalline structures. "We are impressed that you managed to arrive without assistance." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Walker smiled. "Thank you. Though I admit, we were surprised by how old some of your docking systems are. Our ships usually interface with more advanced technology." The laughter stopped. The crystalline being's surfaces flickered. "Explain." "Oh, just that we had to modify our systems to work with your older protocols. I assumed it was out of respect for tradition, rather than technological limitations." A murmur went through the chamber. Walker had done his homework. The docking systems were actually very advanced, but his comment had the desired effect. The council members were now unsure whether humans were ignorant or knew something they didn't. "You are here," a voice boomed from the highest tier, "to learn your place in the galactic community, to understand how things work." Walker looked up at the speaker, a massive being covered in glowing runes. "Of course. Though I'm curious, what exactly do you mean by my place?" "Your species is young," the being replied. "You need guidance, protection, direction." "Interesting." Walker pulled out his tablet again. "Would you mind explaining these trade agreements I've been reviewing, particularly the sections about resource rights and technology exchange?" The chamber grew very quiet. Walker felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him. He'd just broken an unwritten rule. New species weren't supposed to question, only accept. The crystalline being leaned forward. Perhaps we should continue this discussion later. You must be tired from your journey. Walker smiled again. Not at all. In fact, I have several more questions about how things work here. He could feel the tension in the room rising. His first council session wasn't going the way they planned, and he was just getting started. The council station's library was massive, stretching across 3 levels with endless rows of data terminals. Walker sat at one, his eyes moving rapidly across streams of information. He'd been here for 6 hours, reviewing every trade agreement, every diplomatic incident, every council decision from the past 1,000 years. "You're going to get yourself killed," a quiet voice said. Walker turned to find a tall, blue-skinned alien standing behind him. Unlike most species on the station, this one wore simple clothing with no rank markings. "I'm just doing research," Walker replied. "Is that dangerous?" The blue alien sat down next to him. "I'm Mark." At Walker's raised eyebrow, he added, "Not my real name. But you couldn't pronounce that. I'm warning you because I like your species. You remind me of my people before." "Before what?" Mark's skin rippled in what Walker had learned was a sign of distress. "Before we signed our protection agreement with the Council. Now we mine resources for them, trade only through their approved channels, and watch our young people leave for educational opportunities on their worlds." Walker nodded slowly. He'd seen the pattern emerging in his research. Every new species followed the same path. Initial resistance, then acceptance of council guidance, followed by centuries of subtle exploitation. "Look at this," Walker said, pulling up a chart. "Every major council decision in the past 500 years. When the 3 oldest species agree on something, it always passes. Always." "That's just how things work," Mark said. "They're the wisest, most advanced." "No," Walker interrupted. "Look closer. Every decision benefits them in some way. Resource rights, trade routes, technology patents. They never lose." Mark's skin darkened, a sign of fear. "You shouldn't dig into this." But Walker was already pulling up more data. "The Council claims to represent 15 species equally, but I've calculated the real power distribution. The top 3 control 80% of all resources. The middle ranks get 15%. The rest of us, we divide the remaining 5%. "Us?" Mark asked. "You haven't even joined yet. But they expect us to. They're already treating Earth like it belongs to them. Yesterday, a council member asked me when we'd be ready to share our asteroid mining technology." A group of diplomats walked past their terminal. Mark waited until they were gone before speaking again. "Be careful. The Council has ways of dealing with troublemakers." Walker smiled. "I'm counting on it. Every time they try to pressure me, they reveal more about how their system works. Did you know they've tried to bribe me 3 times already? And you refused. Better. I recorded everything and stored it in multiple locations." Walker tapped his tablet. "The Council's biggest weakness is their arrogance. They're so convinced of their superiority that they don't bother hiding their methods well." Mark's skin rippled again. "What are you planning?" "Nothing yet. Just gathering information." Walker pulled up another file. "Though I am curious about something. Why do the middle-ranked species mock new arrivals the most? It's like they're trying to prove they belong with the elite." "Because they're afraid," Mark said quietly. "Afraid of falling back down. Afraid of losing what little power they have." Walker nodded. He'd suspected as much. The Council wasn't just a governing body. It was a carefully constructed hierarchy designed to keep everyone in their place. "You should go," he told Mark. "Being seen with me might cause you problems." The blue alien stood. "You're either very brave or very foolish, human Walker." "Maybe both." Walker turned back to his terminal. "But someone has to ask these questions." After Mark left, Walker continued his research. He'd found references to something called the Original Compact, the agreement that had founded the Council millennia ago. But every time he tried to access those files, he hit walls of encryption. What were they hiding? And why were the oldest species so desperate to keep their power that they'd built this elaborate system of control? Walker didn't know yet, but he was going to find out, no matter what it cost him. Because Earth's future, and maybe the future of every exploited species, depended on it. The Pterodon's AI, Emma, projected historical images across Walker's quarters as he paced back and forth. On one wall, scenes from Earth's colonial period played out. On another, footage of independence movements and successful rebellions against powerful empires. "Show me the British East India Company's methods again," Walker said, stopping to study a particular image. "Compare them to the Council's trade policies." The AI split the display, showing two sets of documents side by side. The similarities were striking. Exclusive trade rights, resource exploitation, divide, and rule tactics. "They're using the same playbook," Walker muttered, "just on a galactic scale." His tablet chimed with another message from the Council. This one was his fourth invitation to a private meeting with the three eldest species. Walker smiled. They were getting nervous. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was Mark, the blue-skinned alien, looking more agitated than usual. "They're watching you," Mark whispered, "monitoring your research, your communications, everything." Walker nodded. "I know. That's why I've been doing all my real research through Emma. The Council's systems can't crack Earth's quantum encryption. But that's not why I'm here." Mark glanced over his shoulder. "Other species are talking about you. The way you study everything, ask questions nobody's asked in centuries. Some want to help." This was what Walker had been waiting for. "How many?" "5 species so far, all from the lower ranks. We've been sharing information through secure channels." Walker pulled up a star map on his wall display. "Show me their territories." Mark pointed to several regions, all far from the Council's central systems. Walker noticed they formed a rough circle around the territories of the 3 dominant species. "Perfect," Walker said. "They chose their victims carefully, isolated, resource-rich worlds. Easier to control that way." "What do you mean?" Walker highlighted trade routes on the map. "Look, every newly admitted species is separated from the others by Council-controlled space. You can't trade directly with each other without going through their systems." Mark's skin paled. "We never saw the pattern." "Earth's history is full of patterns like this," Walker explained. "Empires survive by keeping their subjects divided, but they fall when those subjects learn to work together." He pulled up another file. "Technical specifications from various species. Each of our races has developed unique technologies, solutions to problems the Council claims are impossible. What would happen if we combined our knowledge?" Mark studied the data, his eyes widening. This could change everything." "Exactly." Walker smiled. "The Council's power comes from convincing everyone they're essential for progress. But what if we proved them wrong?" His tablet chimed again. Another Council message, more urgent this time. They were demanding his presence at an emergency session. "They're going to try to stop you," Mark warned. "No," Walker replied, straightening his jacket. "They're going to help us without realizing it. Every threat, every attempt at intimidation, every bribe. It all goes into my evidence file." He gathered his materials, making sure everything was securely backed up. "The Council thinks humans are primitive because we're young. But they forget. Younger species have to be clever to survive. We learn from history. We adapt. We find ways to beat systems that seem unbeatable." Mark moved toward the door. "What's your next move?" "I'm going to give them exactly what they want. A chance to put me in my place publicly." Walker's eyes gleamed. "And when they do, they'll prove everything I've been saying about how they operate." As Mark left, Walker reviewed his notes one final time. Earth had faced colonizers before, fought against systemic exploitation, and won its freedom. Now he would use those same lessons to help free the galaxy. His tablet chimed one last time. The Council was waiting. Walker took a deep breath and headed for the chamber. Everything he'd learned about Earth's history, about resistance and revolution, had prepared him for this moment. The council thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would bow to pressure. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. In a hidden chamber deep within the station's maintenance level, representatives from 6 species gathered around a makeshift conference table. Walker stood at one end, facing beings that just weeks ago would never have considered working together. "They've offered me 30% of their antimatter production," Walker announced, "in exchange for dropping my investigations and recommending Earth join under standard terms." "A generous bribe," rumbled Tom, a rock-like being whose species mined rare minerals for the council. Like the others, he'd chosen a simple Earth name for security. "Which makes them desperate," added Lisa, her tentacles rippling with excitement. Her people had once been great engineers before the council restricted their research. Walker nodded. "Every bribe is recorded, every threat documented. But that's not why I called this meeting." He activated a hologram showing combined technological specifications. "Look what happens when we merge our innovations." The room fell silent as the data appeared. Lisa's people had developed advanced energy systems. Tom's species had revolutionary mining techniques. Mark's civilization had created unique biological computers. Combined with Earth's breakthrough in FTL travel and the other species' innovations, they had something unprecedented. "Better than anything the council has," whispered Ray, a crystalline being. "But they'll never let us share technology." "They won't know until it's too late," Walker said. "Each of our species has hidden capabilities, things we kept secret from the council. Together, we're stronger than they realize." A warning light flashed. Someone was approaching. The group quickly dispersed through different exits, their movements practiced from previous close calls. Only Mark remained with Walker. "The council's getting suspicious," Mark said. "More security patrols, more monitoring." "Good," Walker smiled. "Let them waste resources looking for conspiracies. Meanwhile, our people are already exchanging knowledge through the maintenance crew's communication channels." His tablet buzzed. Another summons from the council. This time, the message contained a thinly veiled threat about Earth's solar system being unprotected from cosmic threats. "They're escalating," Mark observed. "Because they're scared. Look at this." Walker showed him a recent trade report. 3 of their subject worlds have started refusing routine resource shipments. Others are demanding review of their treaties. The whole system is starting to crack. A loud bang echoed through the station's hall. The arrival of another council warship. They were gathering their fleet, trying to intimidate the dissenting worlds. "Your species has done in weeks what we couldn't do in centuries," Mark said. "How?" Walker thought about Earth's long history of revolution and resistance. "Because humans know something the council forgot. True power doesn't come from forcing people to obey. It comes from inspiring them to work together." His tablet lit up again. The council was demanding his immediate presence. This time, the message included evidence that they'd been monitoring his movements. "They think they caught us," Walker said, showing Mark the message. "But every move they make proves what we've been saying about their methods." Mark's skin darkened with worry. "What if they try to arrest you?" "Then the Deadman switch activates. Everything we've gathered gets broadcast to every species in council space." Walker checked his tablet one last time. "But they won't. They still think they can control this situation. That's their weakness. They never believe they can lose." As they left the hidden chamber, Walker thought about how far they'd come. 6 species working together in secret, sharing knowledge and hope for the first time in generations. The council's perfect system was about to face something it had never encountered: unity among its subjects. "Ready?" he asked Mark as they headed for the council chamber. "No," Mark replied honestly. "But that's what makes this different. We're choosing to act despite our fear." Walker nodded. The council had ruled through fear for millennia. But they were about to learn that fear could unite people just as easily as it could divide them. And united, Even the youngest species in the galaxy could change everything. The council chamber was packed, every tier filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The usual quiet murmur of voices had turned into a tense silence as Walker stood on the central platform. Above him, the three eldest species looked down with barely concealed anger. "You have been accused of inciting dissent," the crystalline being announced, "of encouraging forbidden cooperation between species, of questioning the natural order." Walker smiled. Interesting choice of words, natural order. As if your control was somehow inevitable rather than carefully engineered. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one spoke to the council this way. "I've spent weeks studying your system," Walker continued, activating his tablet's display. A massive hologram appeared above him, showing centuries of trade data. "At first, I thought you were just greedy. But it's more than that, isn't it?" The crystal being's surfaces flickered dangerously. "You overstep, human." "No, I see clearly." Walker enlarged part of the display. "Every new species follows the same pattern. Restricted trade routes, resource agreements, technology transfers that only go one way. You're not just taking our resources, you're making sure we never grow strong enough to challenge you." "Lies," shouted one of the council members. "We protect the younger races." "Then explain this." Walker switched the display to show military positioning. "Why do your fleets separate every young species from each other? Why are we only allowed to trade through your approved routes?" The chamber erupted in murmurs as representatives from younger species began studying the patterns they'd never noticed before. "Enough." The crystalline being's voice boomed. "You forget your place, human." "No," Walker replied calmly. "I remember Earth's place. Just like I remember how many times in our history powerful groups tried to keep others down. It never works forever." He pressed another button. New data filled the air, combined technological achievements from his secret alliance. "Look what 6 primitive species managed to create together in just a few weeks of cooperation. Now imagine what all of us could achieve without your restrictions." The council chamber exploded into chaos. Younger species were standing, pointing at the display, shouting questions. The middle-ranked species looked uncertain, seeing their position in the hierarchy threatened. "You think you can change the order of the galaxy?" the crystal being demanded. "We have maintained peace for millennia." "Peace," Walker laughed. "You mean stagnation, control, fear." He turned to address the entire chamber. "They want us divided because together we're stronger than they ever imagined. Each of our species has unique insights, innovative solutions, but they convinced us we were primitive, that we needed their guidance." He pointed to the trade data still hovering in the air. "Look at the evidence. Every decision, every rule, every structure of their system is designed to keep power in the hands of a few. They're not protecting us. They're protecting themselves." The eldest council members were hurriedly conferring, realizing they were losing control of the narrative. But Walker wasn't finished. "I propose a choice," he announced. "Continue under their system of division and control, or work together as equals. Earth refuses to join under the current terms. In fact," he smiled, "we offer an alternative. A new council, where all species have equal voice and equal rights to trade, develop, and grow." The chamber erupted again, but this time the sound was different. Representatives were turning to each other, talking excitedly. Species that had never interacted were suddenly sharing ideas, comparing experiences. "This is madness," the crystal being declared. "We will not allow." "You don't have the power to stop it," Walker interrupted. "Look around. Your perfect system just shattered because you forgot something important. No empire lasts forever when it's built on keeping others down." As the council members watched in horror, representatives from dozens of species were standing, declaring their support for a new way forward. The carefully maintained order of millennia was crumbling in a single session, and Walker knew this was just the beginning. 1 year after the historic council session, Walker stood at the window of the newly constructed Galactic Embassy on Earth, watching ships from 20 different species dock at the orbital station above. Each vessel represented a civilization that had broken free from the old Council's control. "The trade reports are in," Emma announced, projecting data onto the window. "Voluntary exchange of technology between species has increased by 300% in the past year. Scientific breakthroughs have doubled." Walker nodded, remembering how the old Council had claimed such cooperation would lead to chaos. Instead, it had sparked a golden age of innovation. "Ambassador Walker," a voice called from behind him. It was Mark, now the official representative of his people. His blue skin glowed with health, a sign of his species' recovery since breaking free from resource exploitation. "The new council session begins in an hour," Mark said. Everyone's waiting. The new council chamber was different from the old one. Gone were the towering tiers that had placed some species above others. Instead, representatives sat in a circular arrangement, all at the same level. The 3 eldest species were there too, though their ornate decorations seemed less impressive now. "Progress report," announced Tom, his rocky form presiding over today's session. "The combined mining techniques of our species have reduced ecological damage by 80% while increasing yield by 50%. Lisa's tentacles waved excitedly as she added, "Our joint engineering teams have developed shields that make deep space exploration safer for all our peoples. The technology is already being shared." Walker listened as representative after representative reported similar successes. Species that had once been kept apart were now working together, solving problems that had stumped them for centuries. The crystalline being from the old council spoke next, its voice humbler than before. "We acknowledge that our previous methods were flawed. Our fear of losing control made us forget the benefits of true cooperation." "Fear is natural," Walker replied. "But so is growth. So is change." He gestured to the displays showing joint projects across the galaxy. "Look what we've achieved in just 1 year of working together." A small ship appeared on the main screen. The first vessel built through collaboration between 10 different species. It combined the best innovations of each civilization. Earth's FTL drive, Lisa's people's energy systems, Tom's mining technology, and innovations from 7 other species. "The old council tried to keep us dependent," Walker continued. "They thought power meant control. But real power comes from lifting each other up, from combining our strengths." The chamber filled with approving sounds from various species. Even some of the former council members nodded in agreement. After the session, Walker returned to his office in the Earth Embassy. A message waited from Thompson, his old boss. "The president asked me to confirm. Will you serve another term as Earth's representative?" Walker looked out at the busy spaceport, where ships of all designs moved in harmony. He saw human engineers working alongside alien scientists, traders from different worlds exchanging goods freely, students from various species learning from each other. "Yes," he replied. "There's still work to do." His tablet showed reports from across the galaxy. New trade routes were opening daily. Species that had been isolated for millennia were sharing cultural exchanges. The old fears and prejudices were fading as everyone realized they were stronger together. Emma's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Incoming ships from 3 new species requesting contact. They heard about our alliance." Walker smiled. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected. The old council had ruled through division and fear for thousands of years. It had taken humanity, the youngest species of all, to show there was a better way. "Tell them they're welcome," he said, "and remind them, here, every voice matters. Every species has something to teach and something to learn." As he watched the new ships approach Earth, Walker thought about how far they'd come. The galaxy had needed change for millennia. All it took was one species brave enough to question the old ways, to show that cooperation was stronger than control. The future was no longer about keeping others down. It was about lifting everyone up together.